So Ant-Man. Ant-Man is the latest movie come out for them in terms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And what's interesting about this one is it's been probably the least marketed Marvel movie that's been made since Daredevil came out back in the early 2000s. Now what's interesting about that is that Ant-Man is a far inferior character or a less known character in the comic books than those of the other characters that we've seen in movies like Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, and so forth. So it was interesting to see the reaction when the previews first came out. Most reviewers were thinking this was not necessarily going to be the best movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So the question is, did they do a good job? And is this a worthy contender? Is this a worthy addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe as we progress into Phase 3?
Dave Dunn on the reviews.
Ant-Man, starring Michael Douglas, Paul Rudd, and a number of supporting actors. And what they've done with this story is they've really tried to make it small scale as opposed to the Avengers, which is like massive scale. This is smaller scale, it's a heist movie, and it's a very humble person, a very humble hero for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Instead of grandiose gestures and world-saving action adventure, this is very much a down-to-earth movie. This is a movie that allows us to relate a little bit more easily to the character, the actual hero in the movie, because he is a little more down to earth and he's a little bit more realistic. He's not a huge hero, he's just a practical guy who wants to see his daughter again. And the question is that the kind of character that's going to be appealing in terms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is a very grandiose, inspiring universe to be in? My first opinion of the movie definitely revolves around Paul Rudd's character, because he is obviously the centre of the movie, and he is the one who's going to either push this movie up or really bring it down in terms of whether or not it's a worthy contribution to the MCU. And in terms of the review community, I think that most people had a lot of confidence that Paul Rudd would actually be able to do a good job. He's funny, he's been in a lot of funny movies before where he's actually had the lead role. He is a humble guy, and in terms of like being a hero for tiny little insects that run around all over the place to save the world, I think a lot of the review community agree with me. He was going to be a worthwhile actor to be in this role. As for the rest of the movie, I wasn't sure how the movie was going to actually fit into the MCU and how the plot was going to be taken by the audience when they compare it to the rest of the movies in the MCU. We have Iron Man, we have Thor, we have Captain America, these huge heroes in these huge, very expensive movies. And then we have Ant-Man, a guy who shrinks down to the size of an ant and infiltrates little areas in order to steal things, basically, in his film. So there's a huge, big comparison between something so grandiose and massive and something so sort of small and what seems like insignificant. So it could either have been an absolute awesome breath of fresh air, or it could have been a little bit of a disaster. And I think in the early days, the audience believed it was going to be maybe a little bit of a disaster.
And I'll tell you my reservations with the film. Look, the humor looks great. The action looks awesome. I still can't get fully invested and get really excited about the scene when he's leading a bunch of ants.
Okay, let me put this out right at the beginning. I'm excited for Ant-Man. I will definitely go to the movie theaters to watch it. That being said, this trailer didn't grab me. I gotta be completely honest.
Ant-Man. Ant-Man.
And I watched it and I was like, all right, this Ant-Man's coming out. It's what I know now. It's kind of what I already knew. I mean, this was a serviceable trailer for sure, but it wasn't like mind-blowing shit.
All right, well, aren't there all these other characters like that? You know, I wasn't against it, but I was also like, boy, I'd almost rather see Moon Knight before Ant-Man.
But what's the reason to continually watch this trailer? They're going to have some pretty low numbers here, unless people just keep watching it, trying to find something here to get excited about. That might be the one ace Marvel has up its sleeve.
Then as more trailers came out and more of the humour came out in the trailers, people realised that I think it was going to be actually a bit better than they originally thought. So then Ant-Man hits the screens and the audience flocks to the cinema to see, is this going to be a worthwhile addition to the MCU, or is this going to be a fail as originally thought from the first trailer? And the answer is... yes, it absolutely is an awesome addition to the MCU. I know that this is a much smaller plot than the rest of the movies in the MCU, and that the character himself is actually very small, and he plays with little insects just to do a heist and nothing too sort of world-saving, even though the plot does sort of, lean towards a world-saving, conclusion. Ant-Man is certainly a worthy addition, and the reason for that is threefold. Number one, the humour. The humour in the film really is the best part of the film, and the reason that it's been so successful is definitely Michael Peña's contribution and also Paul Rudd's contribution. Michael Peña is this really awesome smiling character who just is very easy to read and to listen to, and when he does actually have a serious reaction, the juxtaposition of his funny character and his serious character makes it absolutely hilarious. I'm not going to spoil the scenes in this movie, but trust me, he does a fantastic job. Paul Rudd relies on his usual glib style of humour, where he sort of speaks lowly about, how ironic, or funny that particular incident occurred and things like that. And that's his usual brand of humour. It carries consistently throughout the film. There's never any sort of very, very funny, hilarious moment that Paul Rudd actually is a part of, in my opinion. But he carries it consistently throughout the film and doesn't really ever let us down. Number 2, the supporting characters. Michael Douglas plays Hank Pym, the inventor of the Pym particle, and he does an excellent job. And I think if you look at the reviews that come out for the movie in its early days, they all agree that Michael Douglas has an excellent role in this film. He hasn't really acted in a little while, and the roles he has taken in the last sort of 10 years haven't been absolutely spectacular. But in this role, he is humble, he is very powerful in his position, and everything he does and says is definitely relevant to the plot, and he doesn't stuff around, which is fantastic. So everything he's saying and doing, you're absolutely keenly watching and listening to really absorb what's going on, and he adds to the plot, which is fantastic. The character of Hope is also a great character, and she is the son of Hank Pym, and she actually comes up as very sort of realistic and down to earth. She doesn't try to overact. Her inspiration and her motivation is very clear in terms of what she wants to do within the plot, and her relationship with Paul Rudd is actually fantastic too. And they don't bash her over the head with anything that she does. Whether or not those two get into a bit of a relationship or not, I'm going to spoil it for you, but anything that does develop with her and the rest of the characters is done in a very subtle way, and I think that's really great, because then it doesn't become a stereotypical movie. It becomes one where you're actually able to work out for yourself what's going on and actually be more involved in the story. Michael Peña is certainly the best supporting character in this film, and if we were going to give an award for the best supporting actor, he would definitely get it. And the reason for that is because he is our most down-to-earth and funny character. He's the guy where you're just watching and loving, takes you out of the seriousness of what's happening in the plot, and just makes it lighthearted and makes you go and take a breath, allow you to just absorb what's happening and have a laugh before we take the next step of the movie. There are a number of other supporting characters, but nothing I really feel like I need to mention, except for the guy who plays the villain. Now, the villain is not necessarily a good one. Marvel Universe are not known for their good villains, other than perhaps Loki from the Thor movies. But he does a good job at showing as much of his own character motivation as he can. The reasons why he's doing things and the emotional gravitas between why he thinks that way. And I think that comes across reasonably well. There's nothing really like feels hardcore about it, but he does a reasonable job. And I think in terms of him pushing the plot in the direction that he wants to go for, you can definitely understand where he's coming from and why he's doing what he's doing. Number 3, the simple and exciting plot. The plot of this movie is not overly complicated. It's fairly simple to grasp, and in the end the whole movie is really a heist movie. A movie about wanting to steal something so that, the world doesn't get threatened by whatever's being stolen. And that's it. And the best thing about that is it doesn't sort of get ground down in all of the details of the heist, all the technical details, what people are going to be doing. A lot of movies, like The A-Team is a good example, where they're going through the briefing of how things are going to work in terms of who does what and what. In The A-Team, that is just too complicated and just unnecessary, and it's stupid, and it gets spoiled by a single rocket being fired into the ship. In this movie, it's basic. You've got 4 parts to play. The briefing takes about 10 seconds, and the rest of it just plays out. So you don't have to get too down and deep in the details, and that's fantastic. It can concentrate on the effect of the CGI on the audience, on the effect of the characters getting excited and getting tense as the final conclusion of the movie carries out. And it also allows you to concentrate on what is important, which is not actually the heist. What's important is the relationship between the characters, which of course make the best films out there. And that sort of leads on to the weakest point of the movie, which is definitely the conclusion of the film, the way the villain is killed in the end. It is a little bit emotional, and they do a good job of using other aspects of the film as it had been progressed to sort of wind up together at the end of the film. But it doesn't really have it as a bigger impact as, of course, the end of like an Avengers film or the end of a Captain America film. In the end, Ant-Man is an absolutely stellar film when it comes to just sitting down and enjoying a superhero film. And I know a lot of people out there at the moment are talking about, especially in the YouTube reviewer community, starting to talk about comic book movie fatigue. The fact that so many have started to come out and everything seems to have been covered now in terms of what a superhero can and can't do on the big screen. People are talking about like, oh, am I going to start to get sick of this thing? And the Ant movie is a fantastic movie that says no, it can be something different. It can be something simple. It can be something extremely relatable and down to earth and funny, and you can still enjoy your superhero film. And for that reason, I'm absolutely giving it an A. I love the hell out of this film, and I'm definitely going to watch it 2 or 3 more times in the cinema or when it comes out on Blu-ray, but definitely looking forward to that. Thanks for watching my review of Ant-Man. If you like this video, hit the like button, write some comments in below, and I'll do my best to reply to every comment that comes out. And this is Dave Down Under signing off.
Dave Down Under Reviews.